grit, determination, and staying power.
Uh-huh.
For a nonprofit, I think just like businesses too, like there's a lot of storms that you have to weather. There was a COVID-19 storm. Nonprofits are especially vulnerable to new recession as well. And because people give maybe when they feel like they have more to give, not necessarily if they may want to, but they might feel like they don't have enough. And so over the years, we've had to weather definitely some major storms. We're in one right now. We're in a storm right now that we're weathering, and it's been challenging. And this is why I said at the very beginning, you have to really understand your mission and have that written on your heart, because you're not going into this to make money. That's not the end goal. And so there needs to be other driving motivators and factors in there for you to stick to it.
Welcome, fellow entrepreneurs and goal getters, to Entrepreneurial Elevation, Unleashing Greatness Within, with myself, your host, Kelley Beveridge, and my guest today, Tara Omotara. And we are both residing in Calgary. And I've recently met Tara through a friend, and she is just such a phenomenal person. And she has a passion, which is what we're going to talk about today, for nonprofit. And she's actually the founder of a nonprofit, Freedom Tree. And I just want to do it justice here, which is on a mission to reduce maternal and infant mortality in Sierra Leone and Canada. And I was creeping on your Facebook, Tara, and I saw that it's coming up 20 years. That was your first visit back in Sierra Leone. So just
Mhm.
so excited to have you here. Thanks for being here
Thank
today.
you. Thank you, Thank you, Kelley. This is exciting to be here.
Yeah. And I'm just excited to talk to you. We're going to talk about nonprofits and just what it takes to run one. And you know
Mhm.
what? How long have you had your nonprofit for?
We incorporated Freedom Tree in 2011, so
Mhm.
that's been 14 years now. So 14 years of running Freedom Tree. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. I know
Thank
that's not
you.
an easy feat, and we're going to talk about that today. What it's taken 14 years. That
That's
just goes to
right.
show who you are as a leader and a person in the community and your resilience and your
That's
vision. So
right.
I'm curious. I want to go back to the beginning. So, what inspired you to start your nonprofit organization? Was there a defining moment that pushed you into action, or
Yeah.
what that?
So the story is actually in three parts. I think what you saw online when you saw me talking about the 20 years
Mhm.
was I had actually been volunteering in Sierra Leone off and on for the last 10 years prior to starting the nonprofit, maybe 7 years. So 2005 was the first time I went to Sierra Leone. And as I began to volunteer, do more, and then take teams, the whole entity grew to a point where I looked at it and I thought, we need to start a nonprofit because we were collecting donations, checks, and I wasn't able to kind of give tax receipts or have a proper system to basically an entity, just a
Mhm.
structure, an entity under which to do all of this work. And so that's actually what prompted Freedom Tree. So the mission came first, Freedom Tree came second.
Oh my gosh, I love it. But I'm curious because most people have this desire to create change and they think, let's start an NGO. That would be amazing. Yet they're not usually confident enough or crazy enough to actually follow through on it. And so, what made you decide to go for it at the end?
Again, it was because I had been doing all of that work prior to, and it had grown to the point where I needed some other kind of entity to do it under.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Good for you, though. That
Yeah.
takes courage because, like I said, most people would love to do that, but they might not necessarily follow through. So, I love that you did.
Yeah. I think the reason why people wouldn't follow through is because they don't have something that they're doing first. They think that the nonprofit is going to be the thing, but it's not. It's just an umbrella. It's
Mm.
just an entity. So if somebody out there says to me, I really want to start a nonprofit to go do that, I would say that's a terrible idea to them. I would say, go do what you want to do. If it grows big enough, then go start a nonprofit.
I love that. That is
Yeah.
such great advice, right? Find your mission first and then
Find your mission
attach your
first.
nonprofit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is my question then. So for those that are listening and they're thinking of starting a nonprofit and or they have a mission, what would you say would be three first steps to consider when you're starting out?
Do your mission, do
Mhm.
your mission, and do your mission. That's it. Just go out and do it. You don't need it's if I decided that I was gonna start a business and I'm like, okay, I need to go set up an organization. No, no, not necessarily. You don't need all that. Just go start the business. Go doing the business and your administration and your structure will follow what you're doing. When the time is right, you can pull all of that structure right behind it. Because if you put the cart before the horse, unless you have a very, very clear mission and a system in which to do it, if you put the cart before the horse, you'll lose focus on what it is that you're trying to do and you might get distracted with actually building an organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I
Yeah.
like it. Okay, this is gonna be a silly question. What is the difference between a nonprofit and, let's say, a for-profit? And why would you choose one over the other?
Yeah, so a for profit, the your end goal is to make money.
Mhm,
Your success is measured by how much money you make in that organization. So if for example, I'm a plumber and that's a for-profit business. I will measure my success by the amount of money that I make at the end of the year. And I have to make as much money as possible to show that. In a nonprofit, our success is not measured by how much money we make because we don't get to keep all that money. In fact, there are rules that Revenue Canada has with regards to what you have to spend of all of your income that comes in. You have to spend most of it, so you don't get to keep it for profit, if that makes sense.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
cool. And do you see and I'm just curious, like, once again, because, like, obviously, I'm an entrepreneur, I love giving back.
Mhm.
The idea of for-profit with mission is enticing. I
Yeah.
don't what is your thoughts on that?
A for profit with a mission?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think every organization absolutely. I think every organization has a mission, right?
Mhm.
And so even if iPhone like Apple has a mission on there and nonprofits have a mission, we just measure the outcome differently in terms of what how they produce and sometimes the process of getting there is a little bit different. And with an iPhone, the donation like you don't get a donation to Apple necessarily, but you will buy a product from them. We'll buy a phone from them because we feel that it's valuable and because they make a valuable product. And then the same thing for a nonprofit. There is donations go to a product that is valuable to the client and we're serving a population. So we're acting as a bridge, serving a population.
Yeah. And okay, let's talk about this, the money stuff. So funding for a nonprofit, right? You're in your 14th year, which is amazing. Yet let's
Mhm.
first talk about getting started. Like, how did you secure funding when you were just coming out of the gates in the early days? And what advice would you have for other people who are just getting their nonprofit off the ground?
I think this it's actually very similar to a for-profit organization. And so you need to figure out what it is that brings funding into your organization. For example, Apple has come up with a statement that they make mobile devices. So I don't know if you've seen like how they've switched from they don't put a lot of money into the iMacs as much anymore or bigger devices, but they're really focused on mobile devices. So the phones and the iPads and the laptops, like those types of things. And they've decided that's what brings the most money into the organization. So I think the same thing for a nonprofit organization, what is it that's going to bring income into the organization? Is it going to be through grants? Is it going to be through donations? Is it going to be through sales, through other means that are nonprofits that 90% of their income comes primarily through sales because they sell a product. They might sell it at a maybe discounted price, but they sell a product, but that's how they get funded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how have you continued to scale and grow and still be here 14 years later when it comes to fun?
Grit, determination, and staying power.
Uh-huh.
For a nonprofit, I think just like businesses too, like there's a lot of storms that you have to weather. There was a COVID-19 storm. Nonprofits are especially vulnerable to new recession as well. And because people give maybe when they feel like they have more to give, not necessarily if they may want to, but they might feel like they don't have enough. And so over the years, we've had to weather definitely some major storms. We're in one right now. We're in a storm right now that we're weathering, and it's been challenging. And this is why I said at the very beginning, you have to really understand your mission and have that written on your heart because you're not going into this to make money. That's not the end goal. And so there needs to be other driving motivators and factors in there for you to stick to it.
Yeah. And speaking of your mission, let's hang out there for a sec. Why this for you? Like, why are you so passionate about helping young mothers and maternity and specifically Sierra Leone? Like, why this for you?
I'll answer this question about Sierra Leone first, and know specifically why Sierra Leone. I feel like it was where God called me. So when I first went on this mission, I went to Sierra Leone. It was a country that captured my heart. And there wasn't any special affiliations to it. People think I'm from Sierra Leone. I'm not.
Mm,
So I don't have an affiliation to it in that way, but it really captured me as a nation, as a country. And then the cause specifically was something that I observed when I was going there. I did notice that I would hear of women who died giving birth, which I didn't hear of, obviously, in Canada. I would hear of babies dying prematurely or young children dying prematurely, which is, again, something that I didn't hear of in Canada. And I saw the heartache and the distress that it caused. And it was just something as I began to research the reasons and the roots behind it, I thought this is totally preventable. This is
mhm.
a preventable thing. And if you look at it, I believe that family is the fabric of our society, is the foundation of a society. What would your life be like, Kelly, if you didn't have a mom?
Yeah, not the
If your
same.
mom died giving birth to, say, a younger sibling, and you were raised by your father by himself, but you never had access to your mom, and then maybe your father ended up marrying somebody else, or maybe not. How would your life be different?
Yeah, it would have changed drastically.
Moms that are so when you have a situation where women are being taken out in that way and dying prematurely in childbirth for preventable reasons, it makes me think, wow, if you could change this, you would change and transform the life of a child. You transform the whole trajectory. Like, what school would you have gone to if your dad had picked the school, not your mom had any influence? Yeah, see that
Right,
reaction? Yeah,
right. It's like,
yeah. How would
y
you have done in your homework? How would
yeah,
you have done in your tests? Would you
yeah,
have been a dropout? How would your life have been changed? And they quite often say, and not to, I want to be careful here with the gender bias, but children can often thrive and do really well without a dad in the home. There are definitely gaps there when you don't have a dad in the home, but when you don't have a mom in the house, you can't even fill that because women carry the brunt of the raising the child and that sort of thing. And so if I can change the life of a child simply because I saved the mom's life, why not?
yeah. Oh my gosh. And I'm sure just for people who are listening, that hits home for those when we're relating it to our mom and you relate it to ourself. And if you are a mom with kids as well and children as well,
Um,
mission has to come first. And I'm
mm,
curious as you're sharing, because I just think storytelling is so impactful. It comes to just grabbing people's attention and having it be relatable. And so, can you share a little bit like how do you get the message out? You have been doing this for 14 years, so I'm sure you've tried
yeah.
different things. What guidance would you give those who are listening? Like, how do you get the message out and how do you get people to stop and listen?
Mm. That is a really good question. I've been doing this for 14 years, but I've only been doing it for 5 years full time because prior to then I was also working full-time job, but I wasn't able to give my daytime hours to it too much. Most of the time, though, growth was organic and just through word of mouth. So people would interact with what we do in Freedom Tree, or they would come to Sierra Leone. She joined me one time, Kelly. It's life-changing opportunity. Um, and they would come, and if when you go there, your life has changed. Like you just because you see the things that are happening, and it just transforms you in a way that you can't unsee the things that you see. And so that was one way of getting the word out. Now in today, what I am been experimenting with is just using digital means to
Mm,
get the word out because our society has changed. And so we do have a very active social media presence. We're on all the social media platforms there other than X because I don't understand Twitter. But if you find us, yeah, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and so we're constantly putting pictures of our work, pictures of what we do, and yeah, and that's it's just in a very crowded digital space. Sometimes it can be challenging to get found in that space because there's a lot of things that are crowding your attention, which then brings me to the next thing. How do you get people's attention? Getting people's attention can be very challenging because most people's minds are filled with the things that they are concerned about in their own lives. It's filled with what am I going to make for dinner tonight? How am I going to pay my mortgage next month? How am I going to make more money at my business? How do I make sure I don't go bankrupt? I don't look pretty enough. I looked on Instagram this morning and I hate Instagram because I saw this person has this life that I want. And so most people's lives are crowded. We live in a society, it's very, very fast paced, and it's only getting faster. We work hard at fitting more and more and more and more into your lifestyle. Even the whole new trend with regards to AI doesn't really take time off of our hands. It just allows us to fit more into the time that we have. And so most people's brains are crowded. And so when you tell them that, could you please donate to this building, they don't really understand what that impact that makes. It's hard actually to convey that image. The other thing that we fight against is the image that has been done for years, like through the 90s and the early 2000s with charities, that they would have the Saturday morning commercials with the flies of the kids around the faces and say, give to this child. People were fighting against that as well. There were people don't really understand what this difference is going to make to a body, to somebody, an individual. So first of all, people's minds are crowded with so many things that they're concerned about, mostly themselves, because we live in a society that thinks about self, thinks about me first. Me first. There's a slogan right now going around in the world about a country first. It's about me first, the things that I want first. And our individual lives are like that. Secondly, people don't want to feel guilty. So they don't want to feel guilty for not giving or that sort of thing. And so sometimes they dismiss it. I remember having a conversation with a lady who she had gone to, I think it was Mexico on a vacation, and I asked her how it was. And she said, you know what, the resort was really nice, but I wouldn't go there again because I just didn't like seeing all that poverty. And it was really ironic because she went to a five-star resort. She had fun there, but she didn't want the feeling of guilt of seeing the people who are poor working for that resort, or when they did step outside the resort, how real people live. And so sometimes people don't want to know. People don't really want to know what's happening in the world because it's going to give them a sense of responsibility, and they already feel like they have enough responsibility.
Yeah. Wow. Those are such great points you brought up, and challenges that one would face when wanting to raise income for the nonprofit and for what you're doing and to get in front of people. And so great job for continuing, like you said, to move forward with grit. And definitely, I'm sure you've had a lot of no's and a lot of rejection and a lot of doors closed, which builds that willpower, I think. Business, raising money, all these kinds of things, right? It definitely creates willpower within when you're attaching it to a mission like you shared. So I'm curious because we're talking about getting attention, getting in front of people, and obviously getting income from and donations from, let's say, people like myself or your friends, family, the community, which in the masses, and even actually, to be honest, I'm a big believer every little bit helps. Yet, what about the big money? Like, what guidance do you give to somebody who wants to, for example, get in there? I know you do grants, for example, and you attempt to get grants sponsored that way or get big donors. So to go after people, that's a bad way to share that, but to approach people, let's say, who have the means to be able to donate and make a bigger difference. Do you have some tips for that on how to go about getting grants and bigger donations?
The best form of donation for a nonprofit is from an individual.
Mm,
Yeah, the best form is from an individual on a regular monthly basis because it's stable, it's steady, even if it's small, it is predictable. Grants can be unpredictable, and as we've seen in our world right now, all the USAID funding is getting cut.
yeah.
Even the same thing for what happens in Canada, and they can be highly politicized. So grants can be tricky because you may not qualify for the grant. And then what happens in the world of grants is that sometimes nonprofits will apply for a grant that they don't necessarily will qualify for or use just because they're desperate to get the money. And so even the world of grants can be quite dirty because the government says we are prioritizing this year. For example, I just tried to apply for a grant recently and we got rejected. And we were told because Alberta is prioritizing homelessness and poverty. And so anything to do with leadership development, anything to do with maternal health, that sort of thing is not a priority for them because they don't feel it's a priority area. And
Mhm.
so what they're doing is incentivizing if you get into that field, then we will give you money. But that betrays your mission because that's not really what you want to do.
Mhm.
And so that's why I said you need a lot of grit to be able to stick to it because it's not like there's a world of grants and money swimming out there. No. And then the same thing goes for what you call the big fish. And assuming that you're referring to corporate donors and corporate donations. Again, that can be very politicized to get because what I've experienced is that most corporations are giving because they're getting something back in return. So they're not giving because they have a passion to see something change. They're giving because they need to have their sign pull a passion to see something change. They're giving because they need to the areas in which we that sort of thing. And they want to give to a specific project to do something. It's not about the people that they're helping. When you look at the root of it, is actually about we need to look good that we're doing something to give back. So the best form of donations has always and will always be individuals. I do get corporate sponsors from individuals who run businesses. And so they'll give me things like, for example, I have a podcast and it's a service. And so they give me that as a heavily discounted price, which is great. That's a business sponsor, but really it's an individual because I know the business owner and
Mhm.
he has chosen to do that, which is wonderful. I have somebody who helps us with some of our graphic design. She gives me at a heavily discounted price, but she believes in Freedom Tree and she supports that. Your best form of donations are those small donations that come in. You just need a lot of them.
Yeah. And like you shared too, and then if you can get them every single month, all the better, right? So have
That's
some,
right. That's
yeah.
right. For
So find,
most people, a small amount of money every month, you won't even feel it. It's like less than your coffee budget or your lunch budget. But for a nonprofit, it's huge because we can budget on it. We know that that money is coming in. And you can see, especially for grassroots nonprofit, you can really see that this goes a long way because a lot of grassroots nonprofit have very low overhead. And so this is going to go a long way in the mission.
hey everyone, I just wanted to hop on quick and say thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to this episode and to my podcast. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to ask if you're enjoying my podcast, if you can do me a favor and if you can like this episode and like the episodes that you listen to, leave a comment. If you can leave a review for my podcast, I would be forever grateful. And download the podcast, head over to my YouTube Entrepreneurial Elevation and subscribe. I would be so grateful and that would be awesome as I'm looking to grow my audience and get in front of as many people as possible so that everybody can hear and listen to and learn from and take away so much goodness from all the phenomenal guests that I have on. And I would just be forever grateful once again if you were willing to do that. So just thank you so much for being here in the first place. Thanks for listening. And that's just what I wanted to hop on and ask. And so just thank you. And let's get back to the episode. Have a great day. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great advice and great thing to focus on too. I'm curious, no, as you're speaking, I'm just thinking you've been doing this for 14 years. I can just imagine the challenges, which we haven't even talked about a lot, but even something like you said, COVID, and then there's a dip, and then right
Mhm.
now, and it's like just to continue to put one foot in front of the other. Have you ever faced yourself personally burnout while leading this organization and this nonprofit? And then how do you stay committed until you get through those tough times?
Hmm. That's a great question. Burnout comes from trying to do everything on your own and trying to do everything in your own strength. For me, I believe that this is something God has called me to. And so there is a sense of, I personally feel like I partner with God on the mission. And so
Mm.
I don't feel like I'm alone in it. And that's the reason why I feel like I don't face burnout, even though I'm working really hard and long hours. The other reason, and I talk about this on my podcast, Radiant Living, is because I feel like burnout also comes when you're not doing the thing that you're meant to do. That's why when people say, I want to start a nonprofit, I'm like, are you meant to do that? Yes, you want to make good in the world, but what's your motivation for doing it? Because not everybody is meant to do that. And so by doing what you were born to do and what you were meant to do, you'll be able to do it much easier and carry difficult things that others may not be able to do because you're meant to do it. It's just really that simple. And I do believe in that principle for anybody, whether you're running a business, you're working in a job, if you're burning out in your job, maybe you weren't meant to do that job.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
again,
awesome.
most of us are on a treadmill of working a job just to pay the bills because that's we have this lifestyle that we have been accustomed to and that we've been told that we need to maintain and we need to do. And that's why our minds are full and our heads are full because you're not doing what you're supposed to do in this life. And
Mhm.
but yet you're afraid to step out and do that thing that you were supposed to do because you're afraid that you're not going to get enough money. You're afraid that you're going to go like whatever it is, all of those things. And those things fundamentally need to change in our society.
Absolutely. And that's where, as you're speaking, I'm like, that's where energy comes from. That's when you
Hmm.
wake up in the
Hmm.
morning excited to do
Yeah.
your day, even if you know you got challenges or it's going to be busy or you got to solve problems or you have things in front of you. So great answer. I'm curious, you talked about you're not doing this alone, you're partnering with God, and I love that. Do you have a team or are you running the nonprofit by yourself? Like you have other bodies of people helping you?
Yeah. We have about 20 staff members in Sierra Leone. No, about 12 staff members in Sierra Leone, plus about 50 to 60 volunteers in Sierra Leone. And then in Canada here, I have a lot of volunteers, people who really care about the work that we do in Sierra Leone as well as in Alberta, because we do work in Alberta here with First Nations women, and they support and partner with us.
Mm, that's awesome. It
Yeah.
does village. Takes a village to support a village. Okay, I
Right.
have a few kind of just random questions, yet I'm curious if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before launching your nonprofit, what would it be?
One piece of advice.
Yeah, you've had all this experience, 40
Mhm.
years. So is there anything that you would change? Is there anything that you would tell yourself,
Yeah.
the younger version of yourself getting going?
Yeah. I would say work on you. So my growth is just as important as the growth of the organization, because the growth of the organization is dependent on my growth.
That's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So true. Eh? Okay, so with that, what would you say moving forward is your ultimate vision with your nonprofit and where are you taking this?
I want to shut it down in about 5 years' time.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
what?
Because then we're done. We've done our goal. And I want to be able to actually say we have done what we said we set out to do. And let's go take a long vacation. Yeah. Yeah. And then what? I don't know. We'll probably
Yeah.
figure out what the next thing is after that.
How cool is that? You're like, actually, it'll be closed for business because we accomplished what we
Accomplish
set
what is
out to do. That just feels good, even sharing that. I
absolutely.
love that for you. I see that happening
Yeah.
for you. What okay, so what's one thing you wish more people knew about the nonprofit space?
I wish that more people knew about the nonprofit space, how hard it is for somebody to run it in sense of the entrepreneurial mindset and grit that it takes to be able to do something like that. That's one thing. The other thing is I hear this all the time, but there's a lot of misnomer and a misinformation around this whole thing about like administrative fees for nonprofits and the overhead and where the money goes. And that's not great. So I wish more people knew how nonprofits actually work and operate, and that it is very important to be able to have money to pay for overhead and admin fees and that sort of thing. If everything wasn't done in an excellent way, you wouldn't want to work in that place. That's why most people wouldn't want to work there. And so you demand something from a nonprofit that you would never do yourself. And I think it's a hypocrisy. And so I wish people knew that, because I think it's important that you don't measure a nonprofit by the lowest admin fee that they have. You measure a nonprofit by how effective they are and if they're doing their work. We
Mhm.
don't measure Apple based on the marketing budget. We don't measure Apple based on how much they pay their staff. No. We measure Apple by how good this product is and how innovative it is. So in the same way, you need to measure nonprofits by what they said that they were going to do. How are they accomplishing it?
Yeah, I love that. Look at are they doing
Because
what they said they're gonna do?
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
like, it
Are
it
they
takes
doing a good job? Are they doing a good job? There are ways to measure that. You can look at, are they doing a good job per by the dollar given to them. For example, we had OpenAI that cost, I think, $100 billion or something like that to produce. And then this other competitor from China, DeepSeek, was only 5 million. And so, okay, have they produced the same product with less time and more efficient? Then they deserve the recognition for that. And I think nonprofits should be looked at in the same way. So it's not how much you're spending on overhead is such a poor measure of a nonprofit. I can't even begin to tell you. And it also motivates a nonprofit to shift around numbers in ways that they shouldn't, to be quite honest. Because that space, the best way is to look at what they're doing.
yeah. And I love, like, when you speak of looking at what they're doing, it's you talked about that you take groups down there, right? To
Yeah.
see it and to have it go into their heart and to say, "Here's where the money's going," and to have that experience. And how often do you take them to Sierra Leone?
a couple times a year. Like we have another trip going in August. Not August, what am I saying? October, November. So get ready, Kelley, pack your bags. You might want to join me. Won't laugh.
I love it.
Everyone laughs when they
I
just
know
see that
you're
nervous
serious.
laugh.
I know you're serious. I can
And
tell
then
you're
you'll come up
serious.
with excuses of how busy I am and I'm allergic to gluten and I can't travel on this and long flights do this. No, no, no. There's no excuses. You
You've
get
heard
on
it
that
all.
plane and you go.
I love it. It's why
Yeah.
you're in the role you're in and why you're running that nonprofit, right? Take over after. That's perfect. Okay, I love that. So you're going in October. So tell us more. So what else do you have coming up? So where can we find you? Tell us about the fundraiser you're doing right now and how people
Yeah,
can.
right now we're in the process of building a school. It's a school in a village called Blama. And okay, so imagine for yourself, Kelley, if you didn't go to school, imagine what your life would be like today. So
Mhm.
we talked earlier, what if your mom didn't have an influence on the school that you went to in your education? Now we talk, and I don't even know anything about you or that, but anybody who thinks of their mother is, oh my gosh, yeah, because they know how much moms play in their lives. So now imagine the role that education played in your life. You wouldn't be doing this today. You wouldn't be doing a podcast and trying to do masterminds for your clients and all of that. So we have 300 children in a village that we're building a school for. If we don't build the school, if the school is not completed, the worst case scenario is they continue meeting under the mango tree and they get a really poor education and they end up like farmers, just like mom and dad, and they live in poverty for the rest of their lives. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is they might end up in drugs or other illegal activities or things because they don't have an education. You got to do something with your life, right? If you don't have that. If we build a school, there is a potential of there being a world changer amongst those students. And I've seen this happen because we've actually, 14 years is a long time that I've seen the work that we've done.
Mhm.
I can look in the eye of people when I go to Sierra Leone. I see them, I talk to them, sit down with them who have been in our sponsorship program for 10 years. And then afterwards, they've graduated and then we've put them through technical vocational school. And now they are working, contributing members of society, taking care of their own families.
Mhm.
That's the potential. So this school is $120,000 is what we're trying to raise. We have raised halfway. So we've
Oh,
done
gosh.
62. Yeah.
Awesome.
We've done 62. Right now we are putting on the roof, but we still need to build a bunch of things like the teachers' quarters and things like that. So we need another 60, 58 to be precise, is what we're aiming for. Every little bit of it helps because I'm hoping that it's going to be open for the school year this September. It's an elementary school, so 7 classrooms from kindergarten all to grade 6. And yeah, people who donate 10,000 and above will get a classroom named after them. So they get a classroom dedicated to you and named after you. So those are our platinum sponsors. And then we also have gold sponsors, which are 7,000 and above. And we have silver and we have bronze. So we have a bunch of information on that. But you can go to our website to donate and you just have to designate it and just choose school or
Mhm.
put in the notes section, put school so we make sure it goes to the right place. And that's what we're raising money for right now.
Oh my gosh, I love it. How cool is
Mhm.
that? Especially
Mhm.
that. And it's gonna be there in September, so when you go there in October, you're gonna be able
That's
to go
right. We're hopefully going to be doing like an opening ceremony, have a bunch of kids, and right now the kids are meeting underneath a tree.
and
Altogether, it's just not even a good place. Like it's not. Yeah. So there's a real need for it. In Sierra Leone, 67% of the schools were destroyed during the Civil War, and the government is still rebuilding, and it's just taking a long time. It's not the most. It's a small country. It's not the most wealthy country in the world, and so those things take time to rebuild.
yeah, no,
And
no.
we are supporting by saying, "Hey, we want to make a difference. We want to make a change here."
Yeah, I love it. And so
Mhm.
we'll put that information in the show notes for everybody who's listening. So if you want to go in and donate or check it out, or even just check out your website, I'll put
Mhm.
Freedom Tree in there as well. And any other information that you want to put in there, just so that everybody you can follow Tara and just see all the amazing things that you're doing. Like,
Yeah.
honestly,
Thank you.
congratulations for everything that you have going on. It's pretty awesome. I want to ask a few last questions, but I'm just curious, is there anything you just want to make sure everybody who's listening hears when it comes to nonprofit? Anything else on.
Well, I mean, there's nonprofit is such a wide topic. We could sit here all day and be talking about it. So,
But you're the girl to go to, right? Because I actually don't know anybody who's ran one personally for as long as
oh,
you have. Yeah,
Okay.
for as long as you have. So
Yeah.
you're a very humble person in what you've accomplished. So I just like congratulations for what
Thank you.
you accomplished, because I think
Thank
that it
you.
does take a special person
Yeah.
to be where you are after 14 years and make it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
so
that.
cool. So everybody donate, 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 donate. And so, okay, I have a few last questions I always like to ask my guests. So I'm just curious for you at this chapter in your life, what would you say is your version of success for yourself?
I think success is living in my freedom. And again, I talk about this on my podcast, and it's being who I was called to be. That's what success is.
Yeah, awesome.
Mhm.
Which is also your recommendation with the nonprofit, right? Is like follow your calling.
Follow your calling. Yeah. Stay in your own lane. Because when you do, and that's a very short sentence, but it
Mhm.
means a lot of things. Like it also means like not just what are you supposed to do in life, who are you supposed to be, how do you present yourself, the people that you interact with. Learn to stay in your own lane. Learn to stay in the to discover what is inside of you, and then live out those things in terms of what God has already placed in you from before you were born. That's going to give you peace. That's
Mm,
going to give you peace of mind. That's going to give you security, and that's success.
yeah.
So, success is not an external thing. Success is not measured. Peace of mind sometimes is measured in those external circumstances, but success is not, I built a big house. Success is not. Unfortunately, that is how our society measures success. So when we say, oh, I met this young man and he was a very successful young man, you're thinking immediately he has a really good job and he's done well for himself and but he could be miserable. He could be considering suicidal thoughts every night. That's not success. So success is also the peace. Do you have peace of mind? Do you have a peaceful life? When you go to bed at night, are you at rest? Are you at peace? Are those things aligned in your life? That's important. And
Mhm.
everything else in your life kind of flows from that, flows from a place of peace. So it's not measured in the things that we do. And again, we have a very backward society where it's measured in the things that you do or how well you're able to convince somebody of something or yeah.
No, great answer. Okay,
Mhm,
I'm curious. So my podcast, the tagline is Unleashing Greatness Within. So what
mhm.
guidance, what's 3 tips you would give someone to unleash their inner greatness?
Number 1, don't avoid problems, run towards problems. Try and solve as many problems as you have. No one has ever gotten great from living the mediocre life. Everybody who's great in life solved problems. The greatest of them solve the biggest problems.
Mm, so
Yeah,
good. Nobody's answered that before. Okay, I
yeah,
love it. What's
yeah,
number 2?
yeah. So, number 2 is maintain your humility and honor everybody around you. Don't look as yourself better than anyone else, but honor everyone around you. Your relationships is important. They're more important than the money in your pocket because people are valuable. And so you need to cultivate those relationships and maintain them and care for the people in your life. So put everybody else first. And then number 3 is I would say be true to who you are. Learn who you are, unleash the greatness within, learn who you are and stay true to who you are, but take the time to learn who you are. You may have to take some time to unlearn who you thought you were to learn who we are.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that so much. Terry,
Mhm.
you're awesome. Okay, I have one last question. What would be a call to action you would give the listeners based on your message today?
A call to action.
Hmm.
Go change somebody's life in the next 2 hours.
Ah, perfect. Go
That's
do
something
something.
everybody can do.
Could be
Yeah.
anything, right?
Buy those flowers, make that phone call, send that really nice text. Go change somebody's life in the next 2 hours. Make a donation if that's what it is, but it's gonna cost you nothing to change somebody's life.
So true. Oh my gosh. Tara, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, go
Yeah.
check out Tara's podcast as well. What is it called again, Tara?
It's called Radiant Living. It's actually just on my you can find it on Spotify, but you can also find it on my YouTube page as well as Freedom Tree's YouTube page, so you can find the
Oh,
link.
perfect. And we're going to put all that information in there. Follow Tara,
Awesome.
check out Tara, check out her nonprofit. And if called for a travel and a trip and to give back and to go have an experience, maybe you're going
That's
to
right.
be with Tara at
That's
the end
right.
of the year in Sierra Leone. You never know. Thank you so much for everything you're doing and for being here today. Appreciate you. So
Thank
grateful.
you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just want to thank Tara for coming on today and just sharing around how to get started with a nonprofit. And I love her share around what's most important is the mission, right? Don't even start unless you have a mission and something that you're super passionate about and something that touches your heart, and lead with your mission, and the rest will fall into place. Obviously, there's things to know and learn and grow through. Yeah, just thanks, Tara, so much for being here and through sharing. If you're curious about nonprofits and want to learn more, reach out to Tara, or you can follow her podcast. And if you want to donate, you can go and follow Freedom Tree, right, on YouTube, and just connect with Tara if you have a desire to give back in some way. She's a real special person doing great things. And so if you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to go back and watch episode 30, where I interviewed businessman Alex Hallett, and he has raised millions for charity. And he talks about how to turn your charity ideas into massive success. And so that was a really great conversation too, a different conversation. You had a great one nonetheless. And then tune in next week, where we're going to be talking to Jeff Zisselman about living the yes life. Okay. What if you lived a yes life? And what does that even mean? And when you live your yes life, how that leads to your purpose. And so that's going to be a great conversation to turn into and listen to. And just thanks so much for being here again. With love, greatness, and success, it's your host, Kelley Beveridge.